Mm.
Right, we're good, Mayor.
Right. You started live streaming, Jeff?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. Administrator Sims, we're going to turn it over to you, sir, for your presentation.
Sure. Jeff, if you go ahead and load it up. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. Welcome to our budget work session, November the 6th. Last Friday, Commissioners and Mayor, we had our work session and there were some recommendations that we presented before you all. 2 million use of fund balance, 3.8 the elimination of transfer to transit. We presented a reduction offered by departments of 1.2 million, a reduction of the outside agencies of 56,000, 25% reduction in travel and training at 126,000. We also presented a reduction from GMAPs of 600,000. And we also had a target requested amount from the sheriff's office of $500,000. At that point, after all of the discussions that we had last week, we recognized, go ahead to the next slide, Jeff. We recognized that we had to get some consensus on some items, and we were successful with that. You all did agree on the elimination of the general fund transfer of transit of 3.8 and the 25% reduction in the general fund travel and training. There was also a lot of questions and concerns about the GBES contribution. Director Williams did follow back up with GMAPs, and that is allowable, what we are recommending. I think, Mayor, there's someone here, if there was a question, if you all had about that as well.
Yeah, Jarvis, would you like for us to get Rocky in now?
I think it'll be appropriate, yes.
Okay, sir, thank you. All right, he's there. Administrator Sims, he's there.
How you doing, Mr. Joyner? Thanks for joining us this morning. I know you've been speaking with Finance Director Williams regarding her recommendation about the GMAPs contribution adjustment from 8.2 to 7.52. And we wanted you to talk with our commissioners about what we are recommending, if you would do so.
Sure. What's happened is there were several changes in the GMAPs valuation due to an experience study we did in late 2019, which involved, because of low interest rates, reducing the investment return assumption, because of increased longevity, changing in the mortality rates to expect people to live longer, and a change in the patterns of people retiring, where there were more people taking the early retirement. All of this led to an increase for various cities across the state. The other thing that hit the Augusta plan and some of the 7-1 valuation plans, the data we received is of April 1, 2020 for the 7-1 valuation. At April 1, as you know, the stock market had just responded to the COVID initially with a significant decrease, and that is factored into the 7-1 valuation. Of course, since then has rebounded tremendously. So the idea here is the 7-1 valuation that initially had about a 15-year, between 14 and 15-year amortization period remaining on the unfunded. The change that we're offering here is to go from essentially a 15-year amortization period to a 20-year amortization period. This is still well within Georgia minimum funding requirements, which allows up to a 30-year amortization period. So we're nowhere near that. It also keeps the city's contribution rate a little down somewhat, as you see, a reduction of about $600,000. I think it's probably even a little more than that. But then the question arises, does this create problems down the road for Augusta in funding their plan? And the answer is no. Both of the funding systems, either 20-year or 15-year, are well within all actuarial recommended pieces. The GMEB's funding policy as adopted by the board is actually on the conservative side to allow cities, when there is an issue such as COVID back in 2008 with the market crash, and other particular natural disasters that hit. We had a tropical storm a few years back in a city in South Georgia got flooded and needed some relief short term for their contribution rate. So this is, there's nothing actuarial that causes me pause with this change. There are plans around the country I work with that do wake me up in the middle of the night being worried. Your plan, moving even to the 20-year amortization period, is not one of those that gives me any heartburn or concern with the funding of the plan going forward. I'll stop there and open it up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Rocky. Administrator Sims, any comments, Donna, or any questions from members of the commission?
No, sir.
Okay.
I appreciate Rocky kind of validating our conversation, and it's a real good recap of what did happen, and to clarify maybe a little bit of the confusion regarding the amount. The 600,000 is only related to those employees that are paid by the general fund. There are additional savings to other funds that would ramp the total on up just a little bit, but approximately 2/3 or more of our employees are housed in the general fund. So the other smaller funds with 1, 2, 5 employees will see some amount of savings, but the majority of it is here. So I appreciate that.
Yep.
Rocky, thank you. Donna, thank you as well. All right, Commissioner from the 9th. Yes, sir, go ahead.
So what we're doing, just extending the time, and that's really what this change is going to be, extending the time on what we already got. It's just not going to make any difference if you would finance a car for 2 years to go to 5 years. I just extended the time. Is that right?
That is correct.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead,
Okay.
Rocky.
Yeah, that is correct, Mr. Williams. The differential is, of course, with a car, you have a depreciating asset. With the pension plan, you've got a robust action going in with new people being hired and people retiring. So it's a much longer term analysis than that. But the idea is the same, and it's just extending the amortization period a little bit.
Okay.
Can we ask for
Commissioner
consensus to move
Commissioner.
this?
Okay, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem, then the Commissioner from 6.
I was just saying, can we ask for consensus to move this on and move on?
Yeah, let's get a question from the 6th. Yes, sir. Commissioner Hassan, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I apologize.
No worries.
So, is this a one-time, just this year?
The idea is to change the amortization so that you have a fixed 20-year period moving forward. Next year, of course, will be 19, and it'll be declining 1 year at a time as you go forward. Any new gains or losses or changes will be amortized according to the funding policy, which is 15 years for gains and losses, 25 years for assumption changes. Then if you made any plan changes, it would depend on the type of change. For example, if you gave a change for retirees, that would be like a 10-year period. And then for actives, it would be more like a 20 or 25-year period.
Okay, my next question is Ms. Donna.
Yes,
Ms.
sir.
Donna, yes, okay, so now here, I'm trying to get some understanding of what we're saying here around the issue of contribution. Are we doing $600,000 less that we won't have to contribute?
No, sir. No,
Okay, go
sir.
ahead.
It is $600,000 less than the $2 million increase that was originally projected. This goes on.
No, Ms. Donna.
This valuation goes on every year.
I mean, I don't have a problem, but I'm trying to understand, because when I look at the paper, I see the $600,000. And so my question I'm asking, are we saving $600,000, or we got to put in the $600,000? Are you talking about $600,000? So how does the $600,000 itself come into play? Are we adding or subtracting $600,000 to this budget?
Okay. let me back up just a little bit. The number that is currently in the proposed budget was the initial assumption to the general fund, which was approximately $1.9 million.
Okay,
What we're doing is we are reducing that $1.9 million by $600,000 or so. So we will actually be putting in more money, between $1.1 million, $1.2 million from the general fund. We'll be putting that money in instead of the increase of $1.9 million. So we're still putting in more money. We're just not putting in as large an amount as was originally forecast in this valuation by Mr. Joyner's group.
okay. I mean, I thought that's what we were saying. I'm just trying to.
Yes,
So
sir. We're still putting in more.
Okay, all right. Mr. Administrator, on this sheet, you got consensus. Just like you had this GMed 600,000, there was, based on the conversation here this morning, it may become important also to put back on that 2%, because I don't think the other day, I think the 2% was pretty much on the real challenge we had was that it was wasn't made mandatory, and I was going to generate about $1.2 million. And the reason I say I think it becomes important now, based on my colleague this morning around this business that being shut down for 3 months, and all of us knows that, are aware of that, I would say, that, you know, we could try to help get some relief there, because the 2%, you have $1.2 million in hand, you know, and so I wouldn't necessarily try to stretch it beyond those, but they had already been allocated, or that they had the potential to do it without hurting themselves as departments. And I think that, you know, that was pretty much how almost had a consensus as well in many ways.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I could be wrong, I'm really saying, but I didn't think we were finished debating, but you don't have it on the sheet. That's what I'm asking.
And excuse me, it's not listed here, Commissioner, because there was still questions on whether or not it was consensus. But the things that we were clear on consensus were the elimination of the general fund transfer of transit and the 25% reduction in the general fund for travel and training. Those two things were, you all indicated they were consistent.
Okay, you do see the bottom of the sheet has $600,000 on it still. Okay, all right.
The bottom says a possibility.
Okay.
Let me go back to travel and training again too.
Commissioner from the ninth, Commissioner Mary Williams, before you do that, and I'm gonna come right back to you. Well, no, I'm gonna let you go ahead, and I'm gonna come back to what the Mayor Pro Tem asked. You go ahead with that. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I mean, the 25%, we're talking about reduction in the travel and training. And we hear travel, but you got to travel in order to get the training, so that they go hand in hand. But we just found out the other day that that's essential to make sure that we do have the training, not necessarily for commission, but for those who need the training. We can't be progressive in both ways now. And I know that budget is a working document. We can go back and adjust and do all those type things. But we need to be careful about where we're making those cuts at. So the 25% was put out there from the administrator's office. And I don't know that 6 votes said that's what we're gonna do or what. But I just think we need to be careful when we eliminate the travel and the training. We got some brand new commissioners coming on, and they certainly need the training that ACG and GMA provide, if nothing else. You can't grow if you don't go, Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. All right, go ahead, Commissioner from the fifth.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Why don't we just make the fund balance 2.6, whatever, to cover that, and take that off the board. That's my suggestion. Instead of 2.6,
Yeah.
whatever, to cover that.
All right, so let's hold for a moment. All right, great conversation this morning to everyone. And Rocky, I want to again thank you. Donna, thank you for bringing Rocky on. Rocky, we're going to give you a chance to exit the meeting now. I don't think we need you any for the remainder of the meeting, but we appreciate the work that you do for the city of Augusta. And it's much appreciated, my friend.
You're very welcome, Mr. Mayor. And if you do need me, just shoot me an email or give me a holler back.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right. Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Okay. All right. Mayor Pro Tem, I'm going to just go to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason that with the 25% was cut is because none of the conferences are happening in the first quarter. I mean, that was the discussion. It wasn't like we were trying to purposely, I mean, there's nothing really happening in the first quarter. That was the discussion that we had based on the travel. So, I mean, I don't know that GMA or ACCG, and Mayor, you know this more than anybody, like, are any of them doing anything before the first quarter next year?
Mayor Pro Tem, I think you're spot on in terms of that. Even corporations are, concerned about travel, and many of them are suspending travel until at the earliest the second quarter of 2021. Obviously, when you look at what's going on with the election, those dynamics may change, but I think if we are shaping this conversation, we can look at it one or two ways. It's a very small amount, a negligible amount almost, and I am confident that Administrator Sims and Donna could find a landing place for the 126, even if there's some concern about, raising that fund balance amount to 2.63. And Donna, would you agree with that? Jarvis?
If that's the will of the commissioner.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you're hearing, and I think this is true, we all acknowledge, and I think you heard it, the commissioner from the 9th just asked about travel for our incoming commissioners. They are taking that training virtually. Madam Clerk has scheduled them. They are currently taking training virtually, which is what a lot of this is. But when you do talk about public safety personnel and otherwise to the commissioner from the 9th, much of that is on-site training. And then I heard earlier, I think even others talked about, there is in fact some training that happens. Most recently, we had the tax assessors, I believe, here in the city of Augusta, very small abbreviated conference, but I think we can accomplish all of these things and do it in a very balanced way and still show good stewardship, which I think is what the commissioner from the 8th, from the 5th and the 9th are talking about, and the Mayor Pro Tem's concerns about making sure that if we do use fund balance, we minimize what that impact is.
Mr. Mayor, we didn't say anything about a quarter, and I understand the COVID-19 has got everything shut down right now. And I'm very hopeful that it's not going to continue from now on. I'm thinking that's going to be relieved. But there's been a stigma about travel and training. The general public think we travel as elected officials just to be going off. I remember when we took the trip to Hawaii, and that's where the conference was held up at. We got criticized because we went. And I wore an Hawaiian shirt when I left here because I wasn't going for vacation. I was going because the training was there. But long story short, we did not say that for a quarter or first quarter. That Donna's done an outstanding job, her and Tim, whatever administrator, trying to figure things out. But it's rough when you're an elected official. You got to figure out whether or not you're going to be able to take the training that you ought to be taking in order to govern like you need to govern. So I just put that out there because there wasn't no quarter or nothing. It said a 25% reduction. It don't say when. Don't say if we're going to find a way. And some people do it, some don't. So we got to be careful. That's my point.
Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead, sir. Commissioner from the 5th.
Yeah. And see, I have yet to take the newly elected officials training, and I've been told that I'm either going in February or March. So they are going to have some training that's going to be face to face. So yeah. I do know that I'm scheduled to go there pretty soon. So that's coming.
All right, so why don't we do this thing? I mean, I think there's an appetite, and this 25% reduction is effectively kind of an across the board cut. Is that not true, Donna?
Yes, sir. That was
Yeah,
an estimate
so-
of what it would be across the board, excluding Sheriff's Department.
So if you look at that, then the travel from a commission standpoint is $30,000 across 10 commissioners. So that's a very small number. Maybe what we do is we, again, in light of what we're hearing, the Mayor Pro Tem asked for a consensus on the GMAPS conversation. I think everybody should be at a good place with that. So let me just see a show of hands. I think we're all at a good place. I'm at a good place with the GMAPS piece. And then the issue as it relates to the 126,000, Mr. Administrator and Ms. Williams, if you could go back and find the 126,000, just so we can close that gap and take that off the table going forward.
But Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the commission travel, but this ain't commission budget. This is the budget for the city. What about if I know what the 30,000 for the commissions are? What about the other travel?
No, Commissioner, the first question I asked was, is this an across the board cut across all departments? And it is. That's what Donna just said. This is across all departments, including the mayor's office. That's what that number translates to, including the mayor's office, all agencies except for the sheriff's department. 25% reduction in travel translates into that number right there.
So that's 25% of the $30,000 that the commission travel with, right?
Yeah, the math on that, 25 times 3, that's 15, that's $650. $650, $6,500.
7,500, Mr. Mayor.
I told him about the math already. I told him about the math. He wants to be a math student, but
Y'all working me too hard. You're working me too hard.
Yeah. Commissioner Hassan is correct. It is $7,500.
He used the calculator.
you got the answer though.
But to kind of go through.
I didn't
to
carry
kinda go
one.
through
I didn't
this a
carry the
little
one. I
bit.
didn't carry the one.
If
So
So what, Donna?
go ahead, Donna.
this would
Yeah.
not, okay, if you reduce that line item in a department's budget, that would not necessarily prohibit that department from going in, and if they had the need to do something that would run them over their travel and training budget, they can do as they always do. They can transfer it from another operating line item in that budget. They have that authority. Like personally for finances budget, we still are going to have some training that we have to do. But a lot of it is still being told to us that is virtual. So that 25% reduction in cost to the finance department is literally me not having to pay for hotel rooms for those employees because they are getting that training virtually. There is still room in a $166 million budget. You are not going to prohibit any department from carrying out their appointed duties by reducing their travel and training one line item by 25%. Now, is this a showstopper? No. But is this going to kill the departments? No. And this, this was a line item that was reached as consensus in our previous workshop. So we're kind of backing up here. But if that's the will of the commission, we'll certainly figure out how to get it done. But you're not going to kill departments by doing this.
Might as well leave all that in there.
Can we put that in the parking lot and move on to the next?
Yeah, let's do
Because,
that.
I
We can
mean,
do that.
There's much bigger figures out there to talk about and see where we can do it.
All right, Jeff, can we get Brandon Garrett in? He said he's having trouble getting in.
Yes, sir. I was talking to Commissioner Franum about that. I think I don't see him in the waiting room, so he has the email. Just make sure he's clicking on the correct date not an older email or anything.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He's coming in now.
Very well. All right. Administrator Sims, continue, sir.
Yes, sir. So the next slide we have before you all reflects, again, the elimination transfer of the transit of 3.8. But based on the discussion last week, we are looking at a $2.5 million use of fund balance. There was discussion about 3 million. We thought that was too high. We thought we could balance our budget with the use of $2.5 million. Also, you see the asterisk, it says changes in revenue projection assumptions. Donna's going to talk in detail about why we're showing that we are able to project about $1 million in additional for revenues for 2021. Go to the next slide now. Okay, go ahead and talk about the revenue assumptions, Donna.
Okay. So a collective budget document is essentially a compilation of all your assumptions that you have given your facts at any given point in time. It is not unusual for those assumptions to be revised as the process plays out. So when we started this budget process, we essentially had 7 months of revenue collections for sales tax. One of those months was, of course, April, which was the worst month ever in the history of having months of sales tax collections for regular collection activity without adjustments. So as we've moved forward, what we have seen has begun to happen is our sales tax collections month to month, August and September, are beginning to look, and I don't know what the normal use of the word normal is anymore, but they are beginning to look much more similar to patterns that we would have expected. So after the end of the receipt of the revenue for September, we revised the calculation for our expectations for our revenue. What we did was we took out the anomaly that was April. And because that, when you're doing math and you have one number that is far lower than the other, it drags the average down. If you've ever watched the Olympics, when they do the scoring, they throw out the Canadian and the German judges scores. They throw out the high and the low, and then you've got an average that is more normalized. So this is the methodology that we looked at. We removed April and we replaced it with what would have been a more normal month of collections, not for April because we didn't have masters, so they were not going to be that high, but what we would have anticipated collections to be running. Doing that and then allowing for what we consider to be an upward trend at this point, we're looking at taking that and anticipating a 3% growth and projecting that for 2021. If you'll go to the bottom column of numbers and running across, in 2019, arguably, that was a very good year for everybody. Those were our actual sales tax collections, $34 million and change. In 2020, when we did the budget at the same time that we're doing now, we looked at 19 and we projected growth. None of us knew what was headed in our direction. For 2021, as you will see, even projecting a 3% growth over our revised collections, we're still at 32.9, which is lower than any of those numbers on the chart. It's over $1 million lower than what we actually got in 2019. Obviously, we will continue to look at those projections, the rolling numbers going forward. We hope, and the data that is coming in show that those collections are beginning to recover. So the 32.9, in my opinion, is a reasonable assumption using the revised model that we have looked at. What we also looked at was TAVT, which is your tag ad valorem taxes on sales of your vehicles, which substituted for, as you know, the former sales tax on vehicle sales. In our original assumption, we projected it flat, just no growth at all. I think you can go to the next slide, Jeff, please. So I've already hit a little bit on this, how we began to modify our model. We did have some additional data that supports our assumptions for the growth in both sales tax and TAVT. Excuse me. The inflation rate for Georgia seems to be leaning closer to 3.8. So in that regard, 3.25 is a modest assumption. There was a report out today concerning sales of vehicles that GM had a record third quarter sales. That would lend credence to the assumption that our tag ad valorem tax would be higher than flat, which is more in line in what we have projected. We still continue to see growth out at Fort Gordon. We have, instead of anticipating that there will be none of our major events here, there was an advertisement in the paper from the National that says they are hiring for the 2021 April Masters. We really don't have a whole lot of data, but if they had an in-person version that generated approximately 50% of our normal bump in sales tax, that would increase the level of income that would come in. Ironman and Arts in the Heart, they're almost an entire year away. If you project that impact at closer to 60%, which I hope is a very conservative number, once again, that lends credence to the model that would increase our sales tax. Go one more, Jeff. Okay, so this shows the effect of our modifications to our revenue models that we initially used versus the new models that we have put out there. The increase in your sales tax due to this change is about $763,000. The increase from TAVT is a little over $300,000. Combine those, almost $1.1 million. Conservatively, go to the next one, Jeff. We plugged in here, and I'm going to turn it back over to Jarvis to wind up the recommendation. The models actually generated like $1,087,000. We always budget revenue conservatively. We plugged in $1,030,000 on this slide to get you to your new balanced budget recommendation. Are there any questions on the part that I went through? I'll try to answer them.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question. Mr. Mayor, I have a question.
Mr. From the stage. Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Ms. Donna, with all the adjustments you've made, is the 2.5 sufficient from our fund balance in your estimation?
Yes, sir. Right now, I think the only question I've got outstanding is to manage, if we go back to that 126. If that's a add to a fund balance, or if that's take advantage of some reductions in other areas. But yes, sir, the 2.5 is a reasonable number with the circumstances that we are currently looking at.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, Commissioner from the 4th. You're muted, sir.
Thank you. I just have a couple of questions I want to ask. I think the explanation that Ms. Williams gave us on 126,000 for reduction in training and travel, that can be worked out as is, leaving it in there as a reduction, and still can be worked out as we go through the year. So I don't think we need to change that. And we verified the Gmails, and we got to project an explanation on the revenue projections. And she explained that, I think, very well. And the only thing that I think we can get if we can get a consensus on one additional item, we'll be ready to go. And that will be the 2.5, which is a increase of 500,000 in the fund balance. So if we don't disagree on that, I think we're in a position to request consensus on the budget as presented with the 167,729,500 and the revenue and expenditure and all that put together to come to that number. If there's not a lot of heartache about the 2.5, I think we can ask for consensus on that, on the whole thing with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
And by the way, I'll ask for consensus on it.
All right. Okay. Commissioner from the 9th, you good with that?
I'm trying to wrap my head around everything, trying to make sure we done dot all the I's, cross the T. I see no problems as of yet, but I think things looks okay. I'm listening to what Donna said, and the 600,000 from the actuary, the way they doing that, I get that. I'm pretty good with it, I think, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Commissioner from the 10th.
Mr. Mayor, I'm good with it.
Okay. Commissioner, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we're getting there, and this is good dialogue, but I have to bring up what I brought up before this meeting started, just to have that conversation before we move forward. And that's, businesses suffered for 3 months in this county being shut down with the pandemic. And, I think it's important that we look at to see if there's a way for us to give them some form of discount off their business fees or alcohol license fees, 25%, because of the fact that they were shut down for 3 months, and seeing if there's a way for us to basically find that within the department cuts and then find that revenue, because you're not going to have that revenue coming in from the businesses. But I think it's a discussion that we need to have before Rob Sherman comes before us, and we have it then, and then we're looking for 300,000 for alcohol, 900,000 for business fees if we were to do a 25% cut. But I think it's dialogue we need to have before we just approve this. So,
Mayor Pro Tem, I appreciate you bringing that conversation forward and realizing that this is not the first time that we've done it. Might I offer you the following as a compromise position, that if there's general consensus for us to move this forward, realizing that this is not the first time we've had this discussion. We had it in the middle of the summer, right at the height of the pandemic. We have a responsibility to expend those CARES Act dollars, and there were CARES Act dollars in multiple buckets that we've not brought to this conversation. Beyond the transit piece, I know that in two meetings ago, Administrator Sims, Finance Director Williams talked about here's what the remaining $7.2 million could generally be, and that was general fund appropriations, right? So when you look at the fact that there's probably about 1.3 with regards to having a conversation about that, what I would ask you to do is to lead the charge on putting that in the parking lot, coming back and addressing that or looking at ways to address that, because these were CARES. This was COVID-19 impact to the city.
Yeah, but there's also businesses that weren't eligible for those funds, alcohol, bars and things that didn't have the opportunity to apply for those funds. I think also, we started where we had almost 6 votes for a 2% cut across this government. And now we're talking about not impacting any of the departments in any way. And I'm not saying we go back to 2% because I didn't agree with the 2%. I thought we should go somewhere in the middle, or 1%, or just have that dialogue. But now we're talking about taking it out of fund balance just to make ends meet and move on. And I get it. And I was at the point of 2 million is where my head was, still listening to all the conversation and everything. But again, I think that we have an opportunity to help some businesses. We have an opportunity to, as well as, kind of make the pain go across everybody and not just by, filling the void with the bucket of the fund balance, but helping the community as well. And I think that we should really look at that and see if, the 1.2 was something we found in all the departments of those who applied. And now we're saying, we're not even going to have that conversation now because we found extra tax revenue and everything else that I'm agreeing with the travel still being in there, what Commissioner Sias said. But I just think we need to have that conversation, because if we have it in December, then how are we going to come back and pull the train back? So.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm not suggesting that, and I want to make sure that we bring brevity to the conversation. Let me offer the following. Once again, I'm suggesting that we have this discussion, and I'm not talking about in December. Our goal is to track towards having a balanced budget 17 November. And in light of that, what you're effectively asking is, how do we minimize overall impact to businesses? And you've got 2 buckets that you talked about, and I'm suggesting we can do that. We know how to do that, and there's a way to do that without going back in the fund balance. There's a way to go and get that accomplished without telling departments whether those responded or not. Specifically, I'll use the mayor's office. If we responded or not, there is a service delivery requirement that the city of Augusta has to those same businesses that you're looking for an opportunity to try to help and assist. On the other side of whether we did something or not, they're still going to call the local government every single day and say, hey, I need help on the sidewalk. I need help on utilities. So let's bring brevity and balance to that from the standpoint of saying, if our goal is to minimize the business impact, especially around licensing and fees, there is a clear way for us to do that and still be prepared to move this budget forward. Given what has been presented by Administrator Sims and Finance Director Williams, we can still do both of those. It's not an either or proposition, and you can do it without the global impact of diminishing those same departments who are going to have to suit up and come back out here and provide services to those same businesses that you're now trying to help in one way or another. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, and I'll close with this. I will go with the 2.5 fund balance if we go back and look at this 1.2 cut within departments and then put that 1.2 back in the deduction of the 25% fees for businesses. I think that is fair. I think that's what we need to be looking at and doing in this budget. So that's kind of where I feel. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to the commissioner from the 8th.
Thank you, Mayor. Kind of in line with what my colleague was just talking about with the cuts, part of the reason we're in the situation of this huge budget shortfall right now is because of assumptions that were made about the CARES Act funding that we thought we were going to receive. And just making these projections based on assumptions for sales tax next year, it concerns me. I'm optimistic that next year will be a great year and that the sales tax will be better. I'm hoping for a much better year in 2021. It's looking that way already, but I just don't want to go out on a limb and make some assumptions, even if they are conservative assumptions, just because of our recent history has showed otherwise. I like where we're headed. I think we're headed in a good place, but I definitely think that we do need to tighten our belts a little bit.
Addition from the eighth, let me add that, and I appreciate the comment, the assumptions are lower than where they were. So it's even more conservative than we probably should be. So do know that it's even lower than where we probably should be with the assumptions.
Duly noted.
Okay. All right.
Thank you,
Going
Mayor.
back to the commissioner from the 10th. Commissioner from the 10th. I got you, ninth, I got you. I'm going to come back to you in a minute. Commissioner from the 10th.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. I was just going to reiterate what the Mayor Pro Tem said, that about these restaurants and bars that have stayed open and they've really been hurt. And with what you've said, that we can come back and find a way to do that, I'll accept. But I think that we really should help these businesses because they have struggled and held on and found a way to just, keep going. And I think that, we should appreciate that instead of, kind of brushing them aside, because they are part of our tax base and they're going to bring taxes in, and they have been bringing taxes in. And so if we can revisit that, like the Mayor Pro Tem said, I'm perfectly happy with that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner from the 10th. Commissioner from the 9th.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm a little bit different. I support the businesses as well, but we can't look out for just the businesses. I mean, this government has a responsibility not just to the businesses, but to all of the taxpayers. Are we going to look out for those as well? We got people who have lost their jobs, even some lost their lives. And I'm not opposed to helping the business with the CARES Act and the money we got. If we can do something with that, that's one thing. But we're talking about the businesses that's making money off of the taxpayers. They ain't making money from their business. The business is using the people we got in Augusta to transact business, to make money for them and for this government. They're not taking their funds. These are legal taxes that we put on them. So I don't want to get into tit for tat, but we sound like we want to look out for a certain group. But if we're gonna think about this COVID-19, this epidemic has spread all over the country, and it affected everybody. So we can't help one of the children, let the other children suffer. We got to help them all, or we leave everybody where they are. So I think we can look at this later. Mr. Mayor, you and the new group can look at it first of the year. When we all get ready, but I just think that we got to understand this is something that we had no idea was going to come about in 19. I mean, when 20 got here, something hit us in March and it's been on us ever since. So I think we had a good place with budget. We need to go ahead and move forward with that, because we're going to muddy the water up again now. We're not going to be able to get this budget passed. We keep adding and bringing in who we think is good. I just think we need to be mindful of everybody and not just the businesses downtown, the bars and other things. So that's my 2 cents, Mr. Mayor.
I appreciate that. All right, Commissioner from the 6th.
Mr. Mayor, I kind of agree. You got a couple of options here. I know I'm going to say both of them, but one is a preference. Number one, when you go back to the CARES Act money, and I'm going to say the reimbursement for us, because it's our money now. People say it's CARES, but it's our money at this point. One option is if you had 1.6, that based on what the administrator and finance sent us, that had not been allocated, if I'm not mistaken. 1.6 there. But a better option would be to keep the 1.2 on the table, because that's what we practically would lose if we get a 25% cut. So we insert ourselves into saving that immediately. We balance ourselves out. So I would leave the 2% on the table, because you got 1.2. We're talking about both of those 25% for business license plus the alcohol is spread at about 1.3. So it almost becomes a wash. So it just makes sense to consider, in many ways, trying to take either or. I think the 1.6 is what the senator said. That's what they had out of that $10.1 million from the CARES Act reimbursement to us.
Well, again, there has been no allocations of that CARES Act money. And, you know, I would be disingenuous if I pivoted and went back on my emphatic statements around the 2% cuts across departments. All departments are not created equal. All departments, again, we've already established that. For me, that's a non-starter. I think we've got a very, very strong presentation. And I'm going to say this, Administrator Sims, I want to applaud you in working with the finance team to bring this to us, looking at all the options in light of our most unprecedented time, at least in our short lifetimes, for those of us who had been around, you know, that long. I've said it before and I'm going to say it again. In times like this, austerity cuts are not what governments do. I go back to my 8 years in the legislature and where Sonny Perdue had to tap into rainy day reserve funds during the Great Recession. And when he left office, Nathan Deal worked very closely with the legislature to restore those reserves to the highest ever. We have consistently done that post the ice storm, paying ourselves back. And then we find ourselves at a goal of 20%, or at least just in practice, a goal of 20% of operating reserves, which is what the 33.4% represents, 33.4 million represents as 20% of our operating budget, if we assume a budget of $160+ million. And so to that end, to cut across departments that we're then going to come back and ask those same departments that in light of COVID-19, you're going to go back out there in the field, suited up. To date, we've had 175 people who make up this great organization who have been impacted by COVID-19, notwithstanding the folks that we've lost. And we are at a very good place. And again, Donna, Tim, finance team, administrator's office, these are reasonable to see where we're projecting growth in next year. And even conservative growth, I think, as the commissioner from the 9th said, we can be at a good place. I agree with the Mayor Pro Tem. We have a way, there is a path for us to address that issue around how we stand up and support businesses. To date, you look at the small business loan effort. I've said it consistently. I thought the application was too long. I thought the process was too long, and we've still got money, but we're doing good work. $1 million, and we've only allocated about 400,000 of that. And here it is 8 months later. We could have and should have used unilateral grant opportunities and stood those businesses up. The CARES Act requirements allow us to be able to do that. And this is a way for us to help bolster businesses going into 2021. So if we're experiencing a recession across the country because of COVID, we can do something ourselves here. It just takes having thoughtful conversations just like we're doing now, and just taking the emotion out of it, sitting down across from one another and saying, here's the bucket of resources, Mayor Pro Tem, and again, lead that charge and say, here's how we do it. We know what the mix looks like, roughly $1.2, $1.3 million. And that's if you went full fare. And it may not be a full fare conversation. It may be, what can we do to just stand up businesses and support them in some way? So I'm fully in support of that. Are you going to cut me off?
Are you talking to you?
So I think it's important for us to have these conversations, right? And to be thoughtful about it.
Yeah, Mr. Miller, thank you. When you say across the board, as we realize, all the departments didn't respond, and so we're not trying to impose a 2% on all of them. We'll take the ones who did respond. We'll take the ones who did respond and deal with them appropriately, because we have to make some sacrifices too. So if they made it, Mr. Mayor, I don't think 2% will shut a single office down in this government and make them cut. That's a small price to pay to stay gainfully employed. That's a small price to pay to stay gainfully employed. So everybody didn't respond to it. For whatever reason, I guess the ones who couldn't, only thing about it, probably someone didn't notify them, but it's not a universal demand on everybody. So the ones that did, will take full advantage of that. When you made mention earlier that we are, I think, and I don't know how to, I'm gonna paraphrase this, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind, I want to attribute something you didn't say, but I do want to put it in context. When we had the ice storm, we didn't just begin to pay ourselves back. My first vote to become a commissioner in August of 2014, we raised taxes. That's how we did begin to pay ourselves back. A portion of that money of the tax increase that we was to go back to allocating to repay ourselves back. So that didn't just happen because we rebound in such a phenomenal way and all these great things happen. And all we do is trying to be prepared. If those departments have allocated that they have the wherewithal and have the ability to continue to function, then we ought to take advantage of those. And the ones that didn't, we're not trying to impose martial law and take advantage of that. We ought to take that, Mr. Mayor. And it seems that everybody always needed to some level of, and I'm not saying it was waste, but they was willing to sacrifice. And I have yet to hear a department complain that this is going to shut their department down.
But if one sacrifice, Commissioner, one sacrifice, everybody needs to sacrifice now.
Everybody can't sacrifice the same thing, Commissioner. Everybody can't. Everybody has the same skill set.
You said that no department
now, that is an assumption.
To be shut down, that no department will be shut down with that 2%. I get that. But everybody or at least brought to the table. You can't pick and choose. I can't pick and choose when I like or don't like and let them do it. Everybody got to do that if you're going to do that now. There's a rule.
All right, so Commissioner Son, Commissioner Son.
Chris, that ain't so.
All right, so let's do this right here. Let's do this. All right, we're about to go off the rails. Let's get back to the good place. All right, Commissioner from the fifth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
When we started and I looked at the budgets that were sent out, it was clear to me we had a path to making a budget that was workable. Everything that's been presented today has been good. But I think we get to the point where we have our different opinions. We get off on the side rails, like you said, and we kind of muddy up the water. I want to say that we need to put our guns back in our pockets. We need to sit back in our chairs and relax. What we need to do, this is just my opinion, is have the administrator bring in the budget and we adopt what the administrator gives us. We're talking about the 2% on all somebody, some participated, some did participate. That's a reason why we need to just go ahead and take it off and do the 2.63. I think that we have some good stuff in front of us, but we can just muddy the water with what we say. And everybody's got different ideas. Keep the 126 on, take the 126 off, keep the 2% cut, take 2% cut off. I think we just need to adopt the budget that the administrator brings to us. We give him some suggestions or what have you, let him make a decision and we adopt the budget. Either way, it's going to be good. If we have to use fund balance, we'll be fine. If we don't use fund balance and donor funds and cut somewhere else, that we'll be fine. I think we're in a good place. I felt good when I saw the fund balance, and then I saw some other things that we could do. The 600,000, how we could keep it in, take it out. I understood the 1.9 million as opposed to 1.2 million. I understood all that, and it was clear as a bell to me. But we've muddied the water. If we had to vote, I don't know which way I would vote right now. So we just need to pull our guns back, let the administrator make the decision, bring it back to us and vote on it. Let's remember too, when we put restraints on our people and our different departments or what have you, they're going to find a way to get what they want. So we may as well take questions off the agenda. If we keep the 126 in, or take the 126 out. If you keep the 126 in with the travel or what have you, some people are going to go somewhere they want to go anyway, regardless. And some people are going to be going and some people aren't. And then we have to pick and choose decisions as to who goes where. So I say, let the administrator go back in his hole or wherever he's going to go and come back out with a budget. Thank you.
All right. So again, I'm going to close with this. Administrator Sims, Director Williams, you guys have done a fantastic job of bringing this alternative to us. As the commissioner from the 5th indicated, it addresses the concerns that many of us had, and it does it in a holistic way. It does it in a way that allows us to continue to move forward as a city and to power this city forward. And so with that, all right, last call, Commissioner from the 4th. All right, Commissioner from the 4th, close us out.
Thank you.
And
And I just
got
want,
my hand up too now. I'm sorry, Commissioner from the 4th. I'm sorry.
All right, Commissioner from the 4th, can you yield and let
No, I
Commissioner
don't
from
want
the
to yield.
6th
I
speak?
was after him.
I have
no,
no
you go
problem
ahead.
with that.
You
I have
go
no
ahead,
problem
sir.
with that.
Commissioner from the 6th, go ahead.
No, I wasn't asking to yield. When you were saying you closed with it, I'll let you know I'm after him. I'm sorry, Commissioner. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead and speak now. You got the floor.
Okay, well, I'll just say this, Mr. Mayor. In the administrator doing it, what I think is being missed here in the comments is that I agree with all the comments said, but what we're asking now is how to talk about $1.3 million and trying to some way support the business and cutting their license. So if they're going to close out with this, also let them, the administrator and finance, consider how do we support that effort. That's what being asked. Because I think that ought to be something that we ought to consider. So keep that in mind in your considerations.
All right, Commissioner from the 4th.
Thank you. I was just going to say then that if we're going to, whether we agree with it or not, if we going to kind of end all this talking and have the administrator bring back a budget, will that be on the 17th of November?
Yes.
And we'll be, then at that point, we can be prepared to vote the budget up or down or sideways. So
That's correct.
there's no need to just keep going on and on and on. So thank you very much. That was my thought, sir. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
All
question, Mr. Mayor. You can't see me.
Commissioner from the, okay, all right, I see you now.
Yeah, I got a question now. If we're gonna bring the
Yes.
budget back on the 17th, and we not gonna get it before then, so if we don't want to get there and hatch it out, do we? If everything look good, we ought to have it before the 17th, is my question.
Yeah, I don't want to be at that place again. So what we'll do is we'll plan another work session. We'll plan another work session the week of, we're going to let the administrator go ahead and proceed. I think what's been presented, what I heard as a caveat from the commissioner from the 6th is address, and let me say this. What I do not believe needs to happen is that this budget needs to be held up with an effort to try to help businesses. That's not a new conversation. And to insert it in the 25th hour and trying to adopt a budget, I think is not prudent. We started having some discussions about this earlier in the year, and I believe the Mayor Pro Tem would agree with that. And so what we don't want to do is find ourselves hedging with the adoption of a balanced budget. And what I saw today was a balanced budget that allows us to, again, to do the things that need to be done. I would suggest that Administrator Sims, as you go through that conversation with finance about how we address the issues of helping the businesses, that it not hold up moving the budget process forward. Okay. All right. If necessary, we'll schedule another work session on the week of November the 9th, probably November 10th. Okay. Which will be Tuesday of next week. We'll let Ms. Bonner send something out. All right, thank y'all. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.